I overheard my daughter and her husband planning to take my money at the family dinner. They said, "He is just an old man with too much. We need to rip him off today." So I immediately left the dinner. A few hours later, my daughter called me. "What happened next will shock you. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Faustina Edwards from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. They say that when you get older, your world gets smaller, your ambitions shrink, your needs simplify, and all you want is peace. Maybe that's true for some. But for me, Sunday dinners were everything. Not just out of tradition, but as proof. Proof that I hadn't worked myself into the ground for nothing. I built a life, a business, and a family I could be proud of. And even though I was past 70, I was still the backbone. The man who paid for the house my daughter lived in. The one who gave her husband a job when nobody else would touch him. I didn't need praise. Just respect. Just one damn meal where everyone showed up, ate, and remembered where they came from. That Sunday started like all the others. I roasted the chicken myself, seasoned just right, garlic and thyme, slow roasted for hours. The kitchen still smelled of rosemary when they arrived. My daughter, Lila, swept in like a summer storm, loud and smiling, her perfume hitting me before her hug did. Her husband, Mark, walked 2 steps behind her like he always did, looking around my home like he already owned it. He'd been doing that a lot lately. Lingering glances at the art on my walls, commenting on the property's value, cracking jokes about what happens when the old man kicks the bucket. I used to laugh it off. That day, I didn't. Dinner was full of noise, clinking glasses, half-finished stories, and overcompensated laughter. I had just stepped out to the side porch to light a cigar. Not even 5 minutes. I needed a moment alone. The sunset was a soft orange, and I was trying to enjoy the quiet. That's when I heard them. My office window was open just enough to catch their voices from inside. "He's just an old man with too much," Mark's voice said, half laughing but serious. "We need to rip him off today. Start moving things under our name." Lila replied without hesitation. "Exactly. He won't even notice. He's getting slow." I froze. For a moment, I actually wondered if my ears were playing tricks on me. I held my breath and listened harder, hoping, praying, it was some twisted joke. But the way they spoke, casually and cruelly, like I was furniture that had outlived its use, it cut deeper than any insult ever could. My own daughter, the girl I raised on my own after her mother died, the one I stayed up all night for when she had fevers, the one I paid through college when she changed majors 3 times. And now, there she was, plotting with that smug bastard to rob me, right in my house. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. I just left. I slipped through the back gate, got in my car, and drove. I didn't even grab a coat. I couldn't stay another second under the same roof. I felt like something sacred had been shattered beyond repair. I parked by the lake down the road, watching the water ripple under the moonlight. My hands were shaking, not from rage, but heartbreak. Betrayal has a unique kind of sting when it comes from someone you love more than life itself. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Lila. I stared at her name on the screen, half expecting a guilt-ridden apology. But no, the first words out of her mouth were, "Why the hell did you leave dinner like that?" It was rude, Dad. People noticed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, calmly, "You thought I didn't hear your plans." There was silence. Then denial. "What are you talking about?" So I told her. Every word. Her tone shifted instantly, from indignation to panic. She claimed I misunderstood. That Mark was joking. That I was being paranoid. But I had the recording. The security system in my office had picked up everything. High-definition audio synced to my phone. I didn't threaten her. I didn't argue. I just sent her the file and added one last line. "Don't ever come near me again." I blocked her number after that. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence so loud it hurt my ears. I'd replayed the audio 5 times, each word hitting harder than the last. I wasn't looking for new meaning. I knew exactly what I heard. I just kept waiting for something in my chest to settle. But it didn't. The betrayal wasn't a wave that crashed. It was a slow flood that seeped through every memory I had of her. I thought about Lila's first piano recital, how she held my hand backstage with trembling fingers. I thought about the time her bike got stolen in college, and I drove 3 hours just to take her shopping for a new one. I thought about the night her husband lost his job, and I took him in without a question, gave him a desk at my company and a paycheck he didn't earn. And now? Now they wanted to bleed me dry like a dying animal. I kept asking myself what kind of daughter does that? And worse, what kind of father raises her to think that's okay? By morning, the grief had hardened into something sharper. Anger, maybe. But more than that, clarity. The kind of clarity you don't get when you're trying to protect someone you love. I'd spent years cushioning Lila from consequences, convincing myself I was being supportive. But all I'd really done was teach her that love comes with no boundaries. That she could take without giving, speak without care, plan without fear. She thought of me as a resource, not a person. And maybe, God help me, maybe she always had. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A text this time. Just one line. I can't believe you're acting like this over a joke. I stared at it, heart pounding. A joke. That's what she was going with. No remorse. No apology. Just deflection. I didn't respond. But I did save the recording in 3 different cloud backups. I wasn't sure what she or Mark would try next, but I wasn't taking chances. By noon, I had called my realtor. The house they lived in? It was mine, technically, legally, undeniably mine. I'd bought it 10 years ago in a quiet neighborhood, intending to give it to Lila when she got on her feet. She never did. She'd been getting on her feet for a decade. I told the agent to list it immediately. I didn't care about the market, the timing, or how long they needed to move out. I just wanted them gone. I also emailed HR. Mark's job wasn't real. He showed up late, left early, and brought nothing to the table. Firing him wasn't even personal, it was overdue. By 3 p.m., the texts turned ugly. Lila accused me of trying to destroy her life. Said I was overreacting. That family's fight, and I was throwing everything away. I didn't answer. What could I say that wasn't already clear in the recording? I was done explaining myself to people who saw me as an ATM with a heartbeat. She could scream all she wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. But I wasn't a robot. That evening, as I walked through the living room and saw the family photo still hanging above the fireplace, Lila in her cap and gown, Mark with his hand on her waist, and me beaming beside them like the proud fool I was, it hit me like a punch. I stood there for too long, just staring, until my knees ached and my throat burned. It felt like mourning. Because it was. I wasn't just cutting ties, I was grieving the daughter I thought I had. That night, a friend of mine stopped by. Walter, a retired engineer who'd known me since the 70s. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. His face tightened when I mentioned the recording. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." Walter wasn't that kind of man. Instead, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You gave too much." Sometimes they don't see the gift. They see the weakness. That stuck with me. Before bed, I deleted Lila's contact from my phone. It felt strangely final, like erasing a part of myself. I wondered if she cried. I wondered if she even felt guilt. Then I realized it didn't matter. My job wasn't to manage her emotions anymore. My job was to protect what little I had left of my peace. The house was quiet now. Too quiet. No more weekend visits. No more surprise drop-ins to borrow money. No more pretending. I poured myself a glass of scotch and sat alone in the den. This wasn't how I pictured my golden years. But maybe, just maybe, it was the first honest one I'd had in a while. I woke up before the sun that Monday morning, not out of habit, but from a restlessness that had settled deep in my bones. The kind of weight that doesn't lift with coffee or routine. For years, I had believed that keeping the family together was a kind of duty, like mowing the lawn or balancing the books. I thought my love could fill the cracks. But now I saw clearly. All I'd done was teach them that the cracks didn't matter, that the structure would always hold no matter how hard they leaned on it. Well, not anymore. I put on my suit, not because I had meetings, but because I wanted to feel like a man with intention. It was the same gray wool blend I wore the day I signed the papers for my second warehouse. Back then, I was expanding. Today, I was dismantling. First on the list, the house. My realtor called just after 8 a.m. to confirm the listing. You sure about this, Mr. Grayson? She asked gently. It's occupied, right? I could tell she wanted to say more, maybe even suggest I wait until after the holidays. But I cut her off. Yes, it's my property, and I want it sold. Start the process today. She paused, likely reading the weight in my voice, then quietly said, Understood. Next came the business. Mark had been on payroll for 2 years, collecting a generous salary to manage special projects. A title I created to keep him out of the way. He rarely showed up, and when he did, he offered ideas that were either plagiarized from online articles or so absurd they'd get laughed out of a third-grade economics class. I knew firing him would stir the pot, but I didn't care. I called HR, told them to terminate his contract effective immediately, and sent a personal follow-up email to our legal team just in case he tried anything slick. I didn't use harsh language or threats, just facts. His role is no longer aligned with company interests, I wrote. Simple, clean, final. Mid-morning, I walked into the main office for the first time in weeks. Heads turned. Not because I was a stranger, I still signed the checks, but because people could feel it. Something had shifted. I passed familiar desks, nodded at longtime staff, and walked straight into the operations manager's office. Darnell, a no-nonsense guy in his 40s, looked up from his computer. You okay, Mr. Grayson? He asked, eyes narrowing slightly. I've been better, I said, closing the door behind me. But I'm clear. He sat back in his chair. Is this about Mark? I nodded. You knew? Darnell hesitated, then shrugged. People talk. I didn't want to get in the middle of family business. You're not in the middle, I said. You're on my team. And I'm cleaning house. He looked at me a long time, then said something I didn't expect. I'm glad. I've watched that man disrespect your name, your time, and your staff for too long. We all have. No one wanted to say it. I leaned against the desk, taking that in. You ever try to tell me? We did. Indirectly. But you didn't want to hear it. You were trying to protect your daughter. We get it. That part hurt more than I let on. I'd been so wrapped in keeping the family afloat that I'd let my business, the thing I built from scratch, rot from the inside. I looked at Darnell and said, That won't happen again. Around 1 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Lila again, this time with a string of furious texts. You sold our house. How could you do this? You fired Mark? This is insane, Dad. You've lost it. No apology. No remorse. Just entitlement in all caps. I didn't respond. I was done giving oxygen to that fire. But later that day, I got a knock on my office door. It was Melissa, our junior marketing coordinator. Young, bright-eyed, and far too observant for her age. She lingered in the doorway, clearly unsure if she should speak. You okay, sir? I nodded, but she didn't move. You don't look okay, she said softly. I exhaled. Family trouble. She stepped inside. If it means anything, my dad cut off my brother last year. Drugs. Theft. It tore us apart. But he says he sleeps better now. Said he stopped being angry the moment he stopped feeling guilty. I looked at her, surprised by the wisdom in her voice. Thanks, Melissa. She nodded and left. That night, I sat in the kitchen with the lights off. I didn't need them. The house was quiet, empty in a way that used to comfort me. Now it felt like a museum of mistakes. I poured myself another drink and watched the steam rise off my dinner. Reheated leftovers from a meal meant to be shared. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel victorious. But I felt honest. For the first time in years, I was making choices not based on fear or guilt or obligation, but on what was right for me. I raised my glass to the silence and said aloud, to peace, even if it costs blood. And I meant every word. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. Families don't keep secrets well, especially not ours. By Wednesday, I got a call from my niece, Clara, the one who never used to check in unless it involved a graduation gift or wedding RSVP. Her voice dripped with curiosity disguised as concern. Uncle Ray, I heard something about Lila's house being sold. Is everything okay? I hated how fast the news traveled. Lila had always been the queen of subtle manipulation, but this time she wasn't being subtle at all. She must have called everyone with the same story, that I'd gone senile, that I was being controlled by outsiders. that I'd suddenly turned against my own blood. I didn't take the bait. Everything is handled, I said. Clara hesitated, then added, she said you cut them off completely, that you fired Mark out of spite. I stayed silent. People love an explanation so they can pick it apart. I've learned that sometimes silence is the only dignity you can keep. By Thursday, I saw the real damage unfold, not through phone calls, but online. I hadn't checked Facebook in months, but an old friend from church sent me a screenshot. There it was, Lila's latest post. A black and white photo of her and Mark on the porch of the house I gave them, captioned, "When family turns cold, remember, blood is only biology. Love is chosen." The comments were worse. Friends of hers, old co-workers of mine, even distant cousins chiming in. "So sorry you're going through this. Some people forget who stood by them. You deserve better. Stay strong." I didn't respond, but I stared at the post for a long time, letting each comment brand me like a slow burn. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the performance. She wasn't hurting. She was recruiting sympathy, painting me as a monster in a story I never agreed to star in. And still, I said nothing. But then, late Friday night, I got the voicemail. It came from an unknown number. The voice was unmistakable, Mark. His tone was half slurred, probably from whatever cheap liquor he could afford now that my checks stopped coming. He started calm, almost polite. "Ray, I hope you know you overreacted. I know things got tense, but what you did, selling the house, firing me, man, it was cruel." He paused. "I try to be a good son-in-law. I really did. But you never respected me. You always treated me like some stray dog." Another pause, longer this time. "If you keep pushing this, there'll be consequences. Don't think we won't take legal action. Lila's already talking to lawyers. We've got rights." I sat there, letting his words echo in my living room like a disease. Rights. He said it like I owed him something. Like decades of loyalty, sacrifice, and open-handed giving meant nothing now that the faucet had run dry. I didn't get angry. I got still. There's a difference. Anger is loud and reckless. Stillness is quieter, but it's where real decisions get made. I called my lawyer the next morning. "Any chance they can actually sue me?" I asked, straight to the point. She laughed, then caught herself. "Ray, they don't have a leg to stand on. The house is yours, the company is yours, and they have no claim to either." Still, I asked her to document everything. Emails, recordings, texts. Just in case. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being thorough. Later that afternoon, I met up with a longtime friend, Edward, someone who'd known Lila since she was in braces. We met at the local diner, same corner booth we always used. I told him everything. For the first time, beginning to end. He didn't say, "I'm shocked." He didn't even act surprised. He just sighed into his coffee and said, "You know, I used to think you spoiled her too much. But I kept my mouth shut. Thought maybe I didn't get it. But now, you did the right thing. She needs to learn what life looks like without you carrying her." I nodded, but something about that comfort sat wrong. Not because I disagreed, but because I hated that it had to come to this. A father shouldn't have to protect himself from his own daughter. That isn't how it's supposed to go. That night, I removed Lila from my emergency contact list. Removed Mark from all company systems. I wasn't angry anymore. I was efficient. That's what they never understood. I don't rage. I remove. And once I do, I don't come back. But even as I closed those chapters, I found myself rereading one old email she sent years ago. It was from her senior year of college, titled, "Thank You, Dad." She wrote about how proud she was to be my daughter. How grateful she was that I worked late nights so she could study. She said, "If I ever forget what you've done for me, remind me." And now, she had forgotten. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe she remembered too well, and still chose betrayal. I deleted the email. Not out of spite. Out of mercy. Some things are better buried than reread. The holidays came quietly that year, like a snowstorm predicted to arrive at dawn, but never did. The lights went up around the neighborhood, blinking cheerfully against the crisp December air, but my house stayed dark. Not out of protest, just absence. I didn't have it in me to decorate, to pretend. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't host Christmas Eve dinner. No roast ham. No jazz playing from the record player. No Lila bursting through the front door complaining about the cold. Just silence. Thick, padded, complete silence. On Christmas morning, I woke to the sound of wind tapping branches against the window. I made myself a modest breakfast, eggs and toast, nothing fancy, and sat at the same table where so many memories had been made. That table had seen everything. Birthday cakes, heated arguments, wine spilled during card games, Lila's science fair project glued together across it. I looked at the empty chair across from mine and felt a strange hollow ache. Not because I missed her, but because I missed who I thought she was. That's the cruelest kind of grief. Not mourning the loss of a person, but the version of them you built in your head, the version that never really existed. I spent most of the day sorting old boxes in the attic. It wasn't nostalgia, it was necessity. Something in me needed order, needed to look at the past and decide what deserved to stay. I found photos, dozens of them, of Lila as a child. Her first tricycle, her missing tooth grin, her prom night. In all of them, I was smiling too. Back then, I believed we were unbreakable. I set the pictures aside, not for display, but for storage. I wasn't ready to burn the past, but I wasn't going to live in it either. That evening, I received a call from my godson, Thomas. He was in his late 20s now, working 2 jobs and raising a daughter on his own after his fiancée walked out. We hadn't spoken in months, but he said, "I heard what happened. And I just wanted to say thank you." I was confused. For what? For never turning your back on me, even when I gave you every reason to. You taught me what standing up for yourself looks like. What real love looks like. Boundaries and all. That stopped me cold. I'd spent weeks wondering if I'd overreacted, if I'd let pride push me too far. But in that moment, hearing the voice of a young man who'd once stolen from my wallet, but now called me to say thank you, I realized something. Sometimes the boundaries we draw aren't just to protect ourselves. They show others what self-respect looks like. And sometimes, that's the most powerful lesson we can offer. Still, the nights were long. I'd catch myself watching old videos on my phone, ones I hadn't deleted yet. Lila laughing, Lila dancing, Lila hugging me at her wedding. She looked happy, or at least convincing. And it made me wonder, was there ever a point when I could have changed things? Could I have been softer? Firmer? Was there a conversation I missed, a moment I let slide? But then I'd remember that audio. Her voice calling me, just an old man with too much. Mark chuckling like it was a punchline. And the memory would snap back into focus, sharp, cold, undeniable. You don't accidentally speak like that. You don't accidentally plan to rob someone who raised you. The guilt never fully left, but it changed shape. It stopped being a wound and became a scar, a reminder. By New Year's Eve, I made peace with the new rhythm of my life. I didn't go out. I didn't toast with anyone. I sat on the back porch with a blanket, watched the fireworks from a distance, and whispered to no one, "May this year be quieter." But peace has a price. A week later, I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store, Mrs. Delaney, who used to babysit Lila when she was little. Her face lit up when she saw me, then dimmed when she registered the look on mine. "I saw Lila's post," she said gently, "and I just wanted to ask, what really happened?" I could have lied, could have smiled and changed the subject. But I looked her in the eye and said, "I heard something I wasn't supposed to, and it told me everything I needed to know." She blinked, nodded, then placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry. Some people have to lose you to understand your value." Maybe she was right. Maybe not. Either way, it didn't change my path. That night, as I flipped through a dusty photo album for the last time before putting it away, I came across a letter Lila had written me for Father's Day when she was 15. Sloppy handwriting. Too many hearts in the margins. But one line stood out. "You're the only person I trust to never hurt me." Funny how that aged. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just closed the album, slid it into a plastic container, and wrote one word on the label: done. By the time spring arrived, the house had been sold, the legal threats dissolved into nothing, and the noise surrounding my decision had faded like the last ember of a fire that burned too hot, too fast. It was over. Not the hurt, not the memories, but the chaos. And what replaced it was a silence I'd learned to live with. I wouldn't call it happiness, not exactly, but it was clarity. It was waking up in the morning without dreading a knock on the door or a passive-aggressive message disguised as concern. It was having coffee without wondering if it would be interrupted by need dressed up as love. I'd started volunteering at the local trade school on weekends, talking to young men and women about business, about failure, about rebuilding. One of them, James, a 20-year-old kid who reminded me too much of myself at that age, asked me what the hardest part of success was. I didn't say taxes or staffing or market crashes. I said, knowing when to cut ties with the people you thought would be with you forever. He blinked. Even family? Especially family, I said, because you let them close enough to use your heart as leverage. I saw something shift in his eyes. Maybe understanding. Maybe fear. Either way, it felt like planting a seed that might grow stronger than regret. At night, I still sat alone most evenings, but the air around me didn't feel so heavy anymore. I had learned how to cook for one. Learned how to spend weekends alone without feeling like a shadow. I wasn't isolated. I chose this. And there's power in choosing peace over proximity. There's strength in walking away without slamming the door, but locking it behind you just the same. Lila never reached out again. Not directly, but word got back to me. Through cousins, old friends, even neighbors who ran into her at the store. Apparently, she was finding herself, going to therapy, starting a small business. They said she was still angry, still telling her version of things. But no one could tell it with certainty anymore. The further she got from my wallet, the less her story held weight. I didn't argue it. Let her tell whatever tale she needed to make peace with herself. I had my truth, and I had the recording. But I never shared it. Never spread it beyond that first confrontation. That wasn't about mercy, it was about dignity. If you need a crowd to believe you were betrayed, maybe you weren't. But I didn't. I lived it. I felt it. I buried the fantasy of my daughter beside the memories of the little girl who used to run to me when she scraped her knee. Still, I allowed myself one final indulgence. I wrote her a letter. I didn't send it. I knew I never would. But I needed to say it. Needed to get the words out so they wouldn't rot inside me. Lila, you broke something in me I didn't think could break. And not just once. Over and over. With your words. With your silence. With the way you turned me into a villain in a story I paid to publish. But I want you to know this. There was never a second I didn't love you. There were, however, many seconds where I stopped liking who you became. That's the truth. Not because you failed, but because you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a purse. I hope you find peace. I hope you earn everything you thought I owed you. But you won't get it from me. Not because I hate you, but because I finally love myself enough to stop bleeding for people who only know how to take. Goodbye, Dad. I folded the letter, walked to the backyard, and burned it in a small tin bucket beneath the stars. It was the most peace I'd felt in years. A week later, I framed a new photo on my mantle. Not of Lila. Not of anyone related to me by blood. It was a group shot from the trade school, me surrounded by a half-dozen students, all of them grinning, holding certificates I helped them earn. I looked at their faces and realized something. Family isn't about biology. It's about respect. It's about presence. It's about people who show up, not because they have to, but because they want to. I still think about Lila sometimes. On birthdays. On long drives. When I pass the bakery she used to love. I wonder if she ever looks back and sees where things really fell apart. I wonder if she regrets it. But I don't dwell. I remind myself, my job was never to make her perfect. It was to raise her with tools. Whether she used them to build or destroy, well, that was always her choice. And I stand by mine. Have you ever had to cut off a family member to protect your peace? Did they ever make you feel guilty for choosing yourself? Drop your story in the comments. Because sometimes, the hardest part of healing is realizing you're allowed to walk away, even from blood. This space is for those who've been betrayed and chose boundaries over breakdowns. Let's talk about it. See you soon in the next story.